Okay, that may be a little melodramatic, but seriously, if you look at what you see on YouTube, it seems like all the cool people are shooting film nowadays. And as somebody who goes back to when film was all there was, I just don't get it. Now, let me say one thing right up front. If the reason you're using film is that you have a conventional darkroom and you're making traditional wet process prints, this sound you hear is me applauding you. That's fabulous. Stick with it. We're not talking about you here. The people we're talking about are people like the YouTube superstars and also like me, people who use what you might call a hybrid film to digital workflow. That means we shoot with a film camera, and then we have the film images converted to digital files that we can put on Instagram or whatever. What's the point of doing this? Well, aside from hipness, it's fun, but I couldn't help wondering, what about image quality? Recently in a studio shoot, I had a chance to do a side-by-side comparison to find out. I set up my 24 megapixel digital camera as usual, then set up a film camera to match it as closely as possible. I sent the film out to a lab that a lot of my film-using friends recommend and got back 12 megapixel scans. When I looked at the results side by side, at first they seemed to match up pretty well, but the more I cropped in, the more I could see that the film image just doesn't hold up. The grain structure had pretty much obliterated the fine detail, and the fact that it is the grain structure means that a higher resolution scan wouldn't have helped. I just would have seen the grains better. Now at this point somebody's probably saying, but what if you used medium format film, and what if you did get a higher resolution scan? Well, Sparky, this one's for you. It isn't an exact side-by-side comparison, but it is the same session and the same overall environment. Now, looking at the film image on the left, I've got to say I absolutely love the way it looks. But again, when you start cropping in, you can see how much detail is getting lost. Look how much more detail there is in the 19 megapixel digital image than the 58 megapixel film image. What's going on? Well, I'm afraid it's something called grain aliasing. That's an unavoidable statistical phenomenon that happens when you sample the random structure of film grain into the grid structure of digital pixels. It produces a false, grotty-looking, enlarged structure that really destroys the detail in your images. The result is that if you're using a film image and making a wet print, it looks great. If you're using a digital image to make a digital file, that looks great. But if you're using a film image and converting it to digital, quality gets lost and there's really no way around it. But here's a confession. I don't really use film for ultimate image quality. The reason I use film is that I like the classic feel of using a film camera. Now, of course, there are digital cameras that give you that same feel. The best known is probably the Leica M10, but it's insanely expensive. Or wait, is it? Take a look at this. Suppose that you're a serious photographer and you're going to shoot about 5 rolls of film a week. That's not an uncommon average. Good quality film is going to be about $8 a roll. The lab I used for my experiment charges $18 a roll, and I found it cost me about $15 for packing, shipping, and so forth. What does that come out to? Well, it means that every week I'm going to be spending about $145 on film photography. That's not a lot. I mean, this is your passion, right? But look what happens. Remember, you're doing this 52 weeks a year. So, $145 a week, 52 weeks a year. Look where it puts you. Now tell me whose pricing structure is crazy. So that brings us back to the question that I asked at the start here. What's the point? I mean, for ultimate quality, film is kind of crappy. In terms of cost, it gets expensive. And we haven't even started talking about the water usage and the chemicals and the carbon footprint of shipping rolls of film around. Now, I'm not going to stop using film. It's fun. But I am going to stop kidding myself that there's any reason to do it other than fun. And if you try to tell me differently, I'm going to ask you, why?